With Ninjago going on for over a decade, people tend to split it into two different eras. Old Ninjago, everything before Season 10, and New Ninjago, everything after Season 11. In this video, I'm going to be comparing these two eras of Ninjago to see what each one did well and what each one did not so well. So, when talking about Ninjago, there are two major things to talk about, the show and the sets. So I'm going to start off with the sets just to get them out of the way. Old Ninjago gave us some great sets, not gonna lie, like the epic dragon battle and the Temple of Air Jutsu. I'm still kind of blinded by nostalgia when it comes to these sets, but I think that objectively, it's very clear that New Ninjago is just much better in this regard. I mean, Lego's building techniques have improved. We also have cool new pieces like the SCCBS that have been used on sets like Evo Mechs and the new Elemental Mechs. And besides, the sets are getting insane. Like, look at Cole's Titan Dragon Mech or the Source Dragon of Motion. I mean, how do you even improve on that? The prices are getting a little crazy, but I'm gonna have to give this dub to New Ninjago. So, to the surprise of probably no one, the more recent sets did turn out to be the better ones, in my opinion. But is that gonna hold true for the TV show as well? Well, let's find out. But before that, only 3% of you guys are subscribed. So if this type of content is something you'd be interested, make sure to hit that subscribe button. But without further ado, going into Old Ninjago, I, like many others, absolutely love Ninjago, and a lot of that has to be due to the old seasons of Ninjago. Starting off with the pilots beautifully introduced most of the major characters while also providing a general idea about what this new show was going to be about. These two episodes literally hooked millions of kids onto the show, which just goes to show how good these two episodes were. Honestly, this pattern continued for most of quote-unquote Old Ninjago. Some seasons were better than others, but all of them continued the story in an interesting and entertaining way, and it was an absolute blast to watch the characters grow so much from season to season. Each season felt unique and provided unique threats to the ninja while also somehow fitting into an interconnected story. Topped off by a 3-season story, the Oni trilogy, that perfectly wrapped up the first 10 seasons of the story with a heartwarming message about unity and courage. I think that the old Ninjago show was absolutely fantastic. Then we get into New Ninjago. See, New Ninjago took kind of a different approach. Instead of trying to build onto the story, it's clear that the newer seasons were more heavily leaning towards the fun aspect of Ninjago, and it showed. These seasons were an absolute blast to watch in my opinion. And not gonna lie, but some of the seasons were pretty good. For example, Master of the Mountain and Seabound are some of my favorite seasons of all time. I absolutely love those seasons, and I think they're up there with the likes of Sons of Garmadon and Hunted, though not as good. Now, as much fun as I had with the new Ninjago seasons, and as much as I gotta love the new Ninjago seasons, I have to say, this whole era was pretty flawed in my opinion. The stories were pretty good, but none of them really did anything major to move the status quo of Ninjago. If you think about it, the ninja are almost exactly the same at the end of Crystallize as they were at the end of March of the Oni, so everything returns to the status quo pretty quickly. But if you think about the old Ninjago, like they were constantly shifting the status quo. New characters would be added and removed, the ninja would gain new elemental powers, and I think that it was just much more interesting to keep up with the story during the old seasons of Ninjago than it was with the new seasons. All the seasons in the new era just kinda came and went, making this whole era just seem like a bunch of random side quests in a video game. Ninja, go to this land and defeat this villain. Now, go to this land and defeat this villain. And repeat. There was no interconnected stories, and before you bring up the Vengestone Buyer plotline, that only briefly appeared in 2 seasons before we got any information about it whatsoever. So I can't really consider that to be a connection between seasons. In my opinion, other than Cole and Master of the Mountain and Nia in Seabound, there wasn't a single meaningful character arc. Cole and Nia's character arcs are great because they were two of the most underdeveloped ninja, but none of the other ninjas really got any chance to shine character-wise. I think that Jay and Kai were hit the worst, and both of them pretty much just got delegated to comic relief in this era, which must have been really sad because those were two of the most important characters back in old Ninjago. So overall, I gotta say, I think that the 11-minute era was just a pretty underwhelming continuation to the Ninjago story in my opinion. But luckily for us, Ninjago did not end there. Folks, we are in the Dragon's Rising era, and Dragon's Rising has fixed most of my problems with the previous installments and especially the 11-minute era. For one, we have a completely new cast, so in a way Dragons Rising seasons 1 and 2 are like the original Ninjago seasons, but a little bit better in my opinion. I love the darker storytelling as well as the willingness to take new risks, like making one of your main characters evil, which is not something the old show would have even dared to try. But it's great to see that they're actually taking risks now in Dragons Rising. If it isn't clear already, I'm loving Dragons Rising so far, but we've only gotten 2 seasons, so if we factor in the overall midness of the 11-minute era, I'm still gonna have to give the nod to Old Ninjago as being the better TV show. Honestly, but if Dragons Rising can keep it up for another 2 to 3 seasons, that might all change because I absolutely love the direction that Dragons Rising is going, and all fans of the Ninjago show definitely have something good to look forward to in Dragons Rising Season 3. Honestly, though, I've got to admit, the old Ninjago seasons just have a charm to them that I absolutely love, and that I relive every time I rewatch those seasons. Within this debate, old versus new, there's many nuances like 11-minute versus 22-minute episodes, and the contrasting animation styles, so I'll try to answer as many of these as possible. First of all, 11-minute vs 22-minute episodes. This one's obvious in my opinion. 22-minute episodes are way better. They even went back to 22 minutes for Dragons Rising. 22-minute episodes just allowed the episode to have more room to breathe, which just leads to better storytelling in general. And I did feel that a lot of the 11-minute episodes did leave those individual episodes feeling rushed, which definitely detracted from the story as a whole. Second of all, animation styles. Old Ninjago was animated by Willfilm and New Ninjago is currently being animated by Wildbrain. In the 11-minute era, they definitely prioritized action scenes over the environment, which just made the show in general look a whole lot more cartoonish. Whereas if you look at Old Ninjago, it looks a lot more realistic, but if you look at those fight scenes, they are pretty basic. Comparing those to fight scenes in the 11-minute era, the fight scenes in the 11-minute era take the dub hands down. They are just so cool to watch, and they're some of my favorite fights in Ninjago in general. So old Ninjago looked great, but it didn't have as many good fight scenes, while as new Ninjago had great fight scenes, but it did look a bit cartoonish. So where do we go from there? Again, Dragons Rising in my opinion is a perfect compromise. It manages to give us amazing fights like in the Tournament of the Sources. These are some of the best fights Ninjago has ever offered, but it also keeps a great environment, and it's just really pretty to look at the scenery in the background of Dragons Rising. And Dragons Rising is probably the best that Ninjago has ever looked. So that was my comparison of both old and new Ninjago. Let me know what you agree with, what you disagree with. But I just want to point out that both old and new Ninjago have flaws. And there are many people who hate on new Ninjago just because it's new. And there are many people who hate on old Ninjago just because it's old. And I think that doing that is just a little bit dumb. But let me know what you think down in the comments below and make sure to subscribe. Other than that, I'll see you in the next one.